This book changed my life, and the principles in it can help you on your weight loss journey. This is not a weight loss book. This is a book about mindset. This is a book about psychology, but the principles in it are so important on the weight loss journey. Weight loss is really a mental game. Now, yes, there are actual physical practical things that you must do in order to lose weight. You have to figure out how to eat the appropriate amount of food, and you have to do that consistently over time. And that's really where mindset comes into play. The thing that will determine whether you continue to take those steps day after day after day, or if you'll just give up, is your mindset. And this book breaks it down into two different mindsets. There's the fixed mindset and there's the growth mindset. And the fixed mindset makes it really hard to achieve your goals. So if you find yourself struggling with something, especially your weight, it probably means you have a fixed mindset. On the other hand, a growth mindset is the thing that helps you achieve goals. In the fixed mindset, you kind of think things are inborn. Either you've got it or you don't, and you really shouldn't have to make an effort in order to do things. But in the growth mindset, you're always in learning mode, and this is really helpful for weight loss. And as Carol Dweck points out, which mindset you choose will have a profound effect on your life. A fixed mindset can lead to an unfulfilling kind of life where you're not really striving for anything, and it can even lead to severe depression and even suicide. And the reason for this is that when you have a fixed mindset, you think that, if you fail at something, that's it. That's the end of the road. There's nothing you can do about it. You can never improve. She gives an example of this world-renowned chef. His name was Bernard Wasseau, and he had this amazing restaurant. It had 3 Michelin stars. It was also really highly rated in this other guide. But one year, he lost a couple of stars in that one guide, and it was rumored that he was going to lose one of his Michelin stars, and he committed suicide. And she points out that when you're in that kind of mindset, it's like once you lose that star or once you have that failure, there's no coming back from it, because if you're in that fixed mindset, you don't think that you can improve. You think, okay, well, that's all I could have done, and it can have these devastating consequences. People in a fixed mindset also tend to suffer more frequently from depression. But here's an interesting thing. People in a growth mindset also experience depression, but there's a big difference in how they handle it. So with a fixed mindset, basically you just let yourself go. You don't get out of bed. You don't feel like getting out of bed, so you just don't. You lay in bed all day. On the other hand, people in the growth mindset, when they're feeling depressed, they still make themselves get up and they shave, even though they don't feel like it. And they do those things that they don't really feel like doing because they've decided that they just have to persevere through this downtime. Now, you might think, well, doesn't it just mean that the people who were really, truly depressed, that those, people just got into the fixed mindset? That's actually not true, because when they took that same group of people who were in a fixed mindset, so who were severely depressed and kind of letting themselves go, when they taught them the growth mindset, then their outcomes improved because they realized, like, okay, even though I'm feeling this way, I can still, get out of bed. I can make myself do these things. And then when they came through the depression, they had lives that were still intact. And when I read this book, I realized what a fixed mindset I had when it came to weight loss. And that's one thing to understand about your mindset, is that quite likely you have a fixed mindset about certain things and a growth mindset about other things. So I'm going to take you through the different fixed mindset traits that I experienced in my weight loss journey. And I'm going to talk about how I switched those to the growth mindset and what that looked like for me. So one big thing that a fixed mindset does is that it blames other people for the problem. And you also want the world to change. You think that they're in error. And unfortunately, this is where I was at. I really thought, well, it's not my fault that I'm overweight. It's because I've had 3 kids. So I was blaming it on my kids, or I was also blaming it on my husband, because I was like, he's skinny. He's never had to worry about his weight, and he eats all this food, and I'm just eating what he eats. And so it's not fair. It's his fault. And I also blamed the food companies. I thought, it's not fair. They've got all these scientists who are working on how to make the food taste so delicious that you can't stop on it. And it's the, fast food restaurant industry's fault, because they've made it so easy to eat way too many calories. And, it's also the media's fault, because they're putting all these impossible images that women can't live up to on the screen. And I was just constantly blaming everyone else for my weight problem. But I finally switched my mindset, and I decided that I was the one who needed to change. I was the one who had made the decisions, and it was on me to change my actions. It wasn't their fault. It was my fault. Another hallmark of the fixed mindset is thinking that things are just inborn traits. And I certainly thought my weight problem was just genetics. I kind of thought that's why I've always struggled with it. It's not me. It's just, that my genes make it so that, it's really easy for me to gain weight. And that's just why I am overweight. And that's why I became obese. But I was able to start switching this mindset just by looking at my actions and asking myself, is it possible that maybe I am eating too much? Maybe I don't even understand that I'm eating too much, but that I really am. I would look at things like, farm animals. If you want to put weight on an animal, you give it more food. And if you want to take weight off the animal, you give it less food. So I started opening myself up to the idea that I really just was eating too much and that I had to learn how to eat less. Another thing you do when you're in the fixed mindset is just give up easily. And while in other areas of my life, I'm pretty stubborn and I hang with things really well, when it came to weight loss, I was definitely in an all or nothing mindset. It was kind of like either I was on the plan completely or, the first time I messed up on something, I was off. Same with once I got down to my goal weight, it was like, I'm not doing anything. And, once the scale started to go up, it just kept going up because I was like, well, there we go. It's just, that's how it goes. And so I decided to change this. I decided I'm going to take that stubbornness that I have and I'm going to be more stubborn than the scale. I'm going to be stubborn with myself. I'm not going to give up on myself this time. I decided that even if it took me my entire life to figure this out, I was not going to quit. Another thing you do when you're in the fixed mindset is that you kind of think effort is fruitless. And as irrational as it sounds, I really did kind of think weight loss was luck, especially the keeping it off part, because I could see in the past, okay, yes, if I go on this kind of diet, then I do lose weight. So I knew that there was a cause and effect relationship there. But for some reason I thought, well, but, in the end, it's all just luck. Maybe I'll keep it off, but maybe I won't. And I just wasn't seeing that it was a direct cause and effect relationship. You have to put forth effort day in, day out. And once you stop putting in the effort, that's when the weight comes back on. And I had to really come to terms with how much effort it was going to take to learn how to lose weight and keep it off permanently. I had figured out many times how to lose the weight, but I'd never really cracked the code on how to keep it off. And what I started to see was it was because I was not implementing permanent changes. I had to figure out how to do that. And I found it really did take a different mindset to really look at what I was doing and then being willing to do the work to change the habits, which takes a really long time. One thing I noticed about myself was I was consistently overeating when we would go out to dinner with people. And over and over and over, it would happen that like every time we came home, I was like uncomfortably full. And I would think to myself, why do I keep doing this? Like, what is it that I'm doing? And it took me many, many times of going out, trying to observe myself, trying to see what I was doing wrong, and then, figuring out what was happening, and then, trying different solutions. One thing I found was I had this habit of every time there was like a pause in the conversation that kind of felt awkward, I would shove a bite of food in my mouth. I'm an introvert. I just felt uncomfortable. So that's how I would deal with it. And then sure enough, when I started adding it up, I was like, okay, well, that's why I'm so uncomfortably full. Because it's like, it doesn't matter if I'm full or not. If I start to feel uncomfortable, I'm popping stuff in my mouth. Even when I understood that about myself, it still took a long time to try to figure out, like, well, what can I do instead? Eventually I figured out, like, okay, when I'm feeling uncomfortable, I can just take a sip of water. I don't have to put something, some food in my mouth. And I had to actually implement that and still pay attention to what I was doing. And I remember I came home one night, we had gone out and I actually ate the right amount of food. And I came home and I wrote it down in my goals document that I kept on Google Drive because I was that excited about that tiny little victory. And the thing is, it wasn't like that was just the one thing that I had to work on. There were so many things I had to work on consistently, time after time after time. And there are things that I still continue to work on. And I've continued to have the attitude that it's worth it. All this effort is totally worth it. Another aspect of the fixed mindset is ignoring helpful criticism. Now, I think this one's really tricky when it comes to weight loss because there's so many emotions that go along with it. Most of us who have struggled with their weight have been made fun of. And so there are all these emotions tied to even comments that are really not that critical. They're trying to be helpful. We can still take major offense to that. So I think it is really difficult to have a growth mindset about this. But I will say that one area where I saw this was in my avoidance of the scale. A scale will give you actual objective feedback that you may just not want to hear. And even though I was trying to lose weight, I was afraid of, that feedback, of seeing whether I was actually succeeding or not. But when I switched over to a growth mindset, I started to see the scale as, an accountability partner, as somebody who's just going to tell me, is your plan working or not? Are you overeating or not? These are the things the scale can really tell you really quickly and objectively. But the key is you have to be open to receiving that kind of feedback. Another sign of being in a fixed mindset is being threatened by other people's success. And unfortunately, I was there. When I was obese, I would look at people who were losing weight and I would kind of be jealous and I would kind of resent it. And I would think, how are they able to lose weight? Or, I would say things like, I bet they're miserable, and these were not good things to be thinking. But eventually I changed my way of thinking and I thought, I can learn. Even if I don't choose to do what this person is doing, I can maybe learn one way I don't want to lose weight. It does work, but maybe that's not the way I want to do it. And I found that you can learn from everybody. And I also used their successes as motivation for me because I would see hey, they did it and they're no different than me. And so I can do it too. Another marker of being in a fixed mindset is that you misestimate your own abilities. In other words, you're just not very self-aware. And this is where I was. When I was obese, I really thought I'm eating the right amount of food. I'm not overeating. I'm not really eating that much. I thought, I'm pretty active. The truth was I was 222 pounds. I was obese and I was sedentary. And when I was changing my mindset, I decided, I really do want to learn about myself. I really want to observe myself. What am I actually doing? Things like getting on the scale for the first time or, wearing a Fitbit. Those things help me to start to see myself more objectively. And I started to just observe myself. What are my actions when I am eating? How fast am I eating? How much am I actually eating? How often am I really eating? How consistent am I being with, being active or not? And once I did that, I was able to really start to understand my own strengths and weaknesses, which really helped me on the weight loss journey. I was able to really understand about myself, that I like big portions and that's what I tend to do is I tend to eat quickly and I tend to eat big portions. So how can I work with myself on that? Now, in the book itself, she does have a section about weight loss and she looks at what do people in the growth mindset, what does that actually look like for them? One thing that she noted is that they have a concrete plan. That was one thing I definitely found to be true on the weight loss journey is that you have to have a plan. If you don't have a plan, it's just because you think, well, I'm either going to do this or I'm not, and there's really nothing I can do about it. It's kind of just luck. But if you're willing to make a plan, it shows that you're actually committed to doing the thing. And it shows that you understand that there are actions that you must take day in and day out in order to get to your goal. Another hallmark of being the growth mindset is that you actively think about maintenance while you're losing weight. So in other words, you're constantly thinking about the habits that you have to be in permanently in order to continue to be at the weight you want to be at. And I completely agree with that. That was something when I was losing weight this time, I actually actively thought about maintenance the entire time. And I think that's made all the difference in the world. And she says that when they experience setbacks, not if, but when, they ask themselves, what can I learn from this? What will I do next time I'm in this situation? In other words, they think of it as a learning process. And in my experience, it makes all the difference in the world. Because the thing is, everybody struggles on the weight loss journey. You're just going to have things that are going to go wrong. You're going to have tough times. You're going to go through plateaus. You're probably going to have some times where your weight goes up instead of down. And you have to figure out what's going on and you have to learn from those things. You're going to find sometimes your plan just kind of falls apart and you have to be willing to sit there and think about it and think about well, what went wrong? Why did it go wrong? And how can I make it better in the future? Instead of just throwing your hands up and saying, I'm a failure. So if you decide to make the switch to a growth mindset from a fixed mindset, there are some things that are helpful to keep in mind. The first thing is to realize that it's going to feel scary because when you decide to switch to a growth mindset, it really means that you are getting rid of your excuses, that you're not going to blame other people. So if you fail, you fail, and you're going to take complete ownership of that. And it's really hard to do that. And she points out there's nothing harder really than admitting that you gave something all you had and you failed at it. It's a lot easier to hold back and to not really try, not really give it your all, so that you can just say in your mind, like, well, yeah, but I mean, I didn't really try. I wasn't really giving it my all. Also remember, failure still hurts. Even if you have a great growth mindset, no one likes to fail. It still stings. But when you're in the growth mindset, you don't identify as a failure. You just say, okay, failure was an event. I failed at that thing. And the great part is you realize that you can learn and you can get better and you can improve and you can try again. Another thing you have to remember is that when you're getting into the growth mindset, you have to start looking for ways to motivate yourself. You have to start looking for those opportunities. Instead of just hoping that motivation comes, you look for ways to get yourself to do the things that you need to do. And this is especially true when things get difficult. That's the big difference when you're going through something hard. Because when you're in a fixed mindset, when things are going well, like motivation's there, it's no big deal. But when things start to get hard, that's when people in the fixed mindset, they're like, well, I don't feel like doing it anymore. I don't feel any motivation, so they quit. But in the growth mindset, you're having to search for ways to motivate yourself and take action. Another thing to remember is that your old mindset is still going to be in your head. This is something that I had to learn over time that, even though it's been years since I read this book and I totally agree with the premise and I've seen how it can work, I still have, fixed mindset traits in my head that I have the option of using if I want to, like they're there and I think of it, but I also have the option of choosing the growth mindset. And that's the thing to remember. You have the choice, but the old one's still going to be there. And the old one is going to seem familiar and comfortable too. So it really is a matter of, seeing both of those options and then just choosing the growth mindset. A really hard thing about the growth mindset is that you have to learn how to feel bad, but do good anyway. The idea is that there are going to be lots of times where you're just not going to feel up to it. You're just not going to feel like it. Maybe you're feeling depressed. And instead of just, kind of wallowing in it, you have to get yourself up and do the things. And of course, you do have to exercise some, good judgment, because there are times when you do need to make a change because maybe your plan's too hard or the plan's making you miserable. And there really is a change that needs to be made. But the thing is, even when you have a plan that you really do enjoy, that is giving you results, there are going to be plenty of days where you're just not going to feel like it. Like you're going to feel, like I don't really want to fast today, or I don't really want to do this thing today. I don't want to go for my walk. If I went on my walk only when I was feeling motivated to go do it, I'd probably get out there 20% of the time. I've really grown the most and learned the most when I have had those moments where maybe I'm really upset about something and what I really want to do is I really want to eat that chocolate chip cookie, but instead I continue to, fast because that's my plan. And I've learned about myself and I've improved. Or, when I have felt like, I don't really want to get out and do my walk today, but I go do it anyway. It has built discipline in me and it has made it so that my life is better. So in the end, mindset change isn't about just figuring out a couple of tricks. It's really about seeing your life in an entirely new way and approaching every challenge with that new mindset. And also, importantly, that you don't slip back into the fixed mindset, that you continue to work on implementing it day in and day out, that you see your life in this whole new way. So if you're struggling to lose weight, I would highly recommend that you pick up this book. It's really been a life-changing book for me. I refer to it all the time. And not only did it help me lose weight, it also has helped me with my parenting, my relationships with others, being able to, try different things like, really trying to work on getting better at art and getting better at writing, and to have the mindset shift to know that it's not just innate talent. It's about working hard at things. So I hope that you found this video helpful. Thank you for joining me, and I'll see you in the next one.